All right, welcome back to the Elias Macco Show. Whether it's an aggressive customer threatening to wait for a cashier after their shift, or one that's banging on the counter to show their displeasure, or harassing store attendants on their work social media pages, retail workers are facing a rise in aggression and disrespect from customers. And I know we see examples of it all the time on social media, but sometimes I have to pause because you can see one incident on social media. I think it's important not to take one incident on social media and say, well, it must be happening everywhere every day. But seems to be that situation is getting worse for retail workers in this country. Let's go now to Rosannie Filato, who is a director of Local 500 at the United Food and Commercial Workers Union over here in Quebec. Rosannie, welcome to the show. This is a new gig for you, isn't it?
It is. Good morning, Elias. I'm happy to be back.
So some of our listeners will recognize you when you used to come on. Of course, you were a city councillor in Montreal for quite some time.
Yeah, and your City Hall segment on Thursdays.
That's right.
Really happy to be back.
Okay, we had good fun there. Now you've got a post here, director at this local of a very important union in this country and throughout Quebec as well. Tell us, Rosannie, what are retail workers facing in this country right now?
Yes, so at USCW 500, TUAC 500, we represent over 35,000 members across Quebec in the retail industry, mainly in grocery stores. And as you said, we've been seeing a rise in impatient customers, if I can describe it that way. It's something that's been going on for a while. We saw a lot of it during the pandemic. Many situations, as you described, that were very intense and ended up on social media, but others that can happen on a daily basis, I would say. People who are extremely aggressive with cashiers, for example, impatient because the shelves aren't stocked or missing merchandise. Detail Quebec is actually calling it a courtesy crisis. And that's because it's just become very difficult for retail workers oftentimes to get respect from certain customers. So it's becoming more and more difficult, which is why Detail Quebec took the initiative of putting this campaign for respect at work.
So what I'm trying to figure out is whether people are changing or, the last few years has been very difficult, staff shortages, hiring difficulties, labor issues, right? Or is this, if the people are the same, but they're just facing worse scenarios and then they're acting out? So what do you think? Because, you say it's a courtesy crisis here. Where do you put the blame? Where do you point the finger? Are the people changing, or is it the same people facing worse scenarios and they're acting out, they're lashing out?
I have a feeling it's a combination of everything you just mentioned. We did go through a huge pandemic. As you said, there's labor shortages, staff shortages. So it's tough. We can talk about prices as well. We've seen people complaining about inflation with reason. So I think it's a combination of all these things. We also see in society in general polarization, whether it's on the political level, whether it's in society. So I think it's a combination of all these things. But I do think that what's important is to make sure that workers have the tools to deal with this. Wherever this frustration is coming from, workers need those tools to deal with the frustration, which is why we're trying to raise awareness, especially to customers, to consumers that come into the stores, that it's important to respect workers, that there's a human behind the uniform. There's a person behind the uniform. And it's not that person who determined the prices. It's not that person who, is not receiving orders from the suppliers. That person is doing their job. They did their job through a whole pandemic. They were there when we were home, when we were safe. They're still there nights, weekends. So I think it's really important to remember that, respect doesn't cost anything and it pays off. And that's the initiatives of Detail Quebec, which is why there's going to be those posters, those campaign buttons to raise awareness with consumers.
So I'm looking at some of the posters, by the way, that are going up, and for a long time, I've seen similar posters in health institutions. Okay, and here's one example of a poster. It's a drawing of an enraged customer yelling at an employee. And then the message on the poster is, behind the uniform, there's a person, right?
Yeah.
And I see it and I get it, but I'm like, geez, have we reached the point where we have to remind everyone we're all human beings? So that's where I get to, it's the people that are changing. Social media or something is making us worse if we have to remind people, hey, everyone's a human.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on in the world. Mm-hmm. I agree with you. At the same time, whether it's unfortunate or not that we need to remind people, we need those initiatives right mm-hmm. now. And, I think it's important to follow those initiatives. Like you say, it's posters that we see in other sectors. Now we're putting it up in the retail industry. But it's important that these initiatives are followed through with training for our members, for workers in the retail industry, because sometimes it's about how you receive that aggression or how you receive that intimidation. Mm-hmm. Or those threats. There's ways to de-escalate a situation. There's ways to calm situations down. And we don't want to put all the burden on the worker. If the situation is too big, we ask them usually to go see a supervisor or to go see a colleague with a little bit more experience to de-escalate the situation. But like you say, it's possible that things are changing, but we need to give everybody, whether it's consumers, whether it's employers, whether it's workers, those tools to deal with these situations.
We're with Rosannie Filato, who's director of Local 500 of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union here in Quebec. So, Rosannie, since you've been in your post, do you have an example of the worst example of what one of your members has faced working behind the cash in another retail outlet and food service? What have you seen and heard among your members?
Well, we've heard members saying, the ones that you've seen in the media, we've seen those similar situations. So members, who have been told, I'll meet you in the parking lot. It's terrible. It's terrible. When you go to work, you're going there to feed your family. We often say work is your dignity in itself. And when you're going to work and you're afraid, for that member who was told, I'll meet you in the parking lot later, that's just terrible. So that's why we're reminding people, it's the holiday season as well. People are working hard. So important. Just a smile, a little, thank you for the work that you do.
It definitely can. It definitely can go a long way. These little things. I want to wrap up here with just this question. Is it a bit of a two-way street as well? Because I have some listeners writing to me where they feel they have a perception, and it may be true. They have a perception that the level of customer service has gone down. They feel they're being treated rudely, and there's a reaction effect here. Are there also initiatives here on more training, better training, so everyone is doing that side of the smile equation?
Of course, but I would say that even if you ask your consumers, the majority of consumers will probably tell you that the majority of their experiences are positive. And that's why it's important to remember that behind the uniform, there's a person. And I know we often use the old phrase, the customer is always right. I think it's also important to remember, and that's why that poster is there, that there's a person behind the uniform. That person had a long day, a long week. It wasn't their best moment, and yes, training, but at the same time, when we talk about labor shortages, it's difficult for employers right now to train. It's something that we push for. Training, of course. We actually have a training center at TUAC 500, le Centre de Formation de l'Alimentation du Commerce, Québec. So we do push for training. But I would say that a majority of the customers are well served by our members.
And Rosannie, that's true. I think about all my interactions that I go through. Vast majority are pleasant and fine. Let's try and keep the other scenarios to a minimum over the holidays. Rosannie, great pleasure talking to you once again. Thanks so much.
Likewise. Thanks, Elias.
That's Rosannie Filato, director of the Local 500 of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union.